Within the root folder, let's create a new folder and we're going to name it as Kates. So Kates for Kubernetes. And within Kubernetes, let's yet create a new folder called Minikube. Then within Minikube, let's create yet another folder. And here I'm going to say boot and then strap. So this is where we're going to put Postgres, Zipkin, as well as RabbitMQ. So let's have one folder for Postgres. And within Postgres, let's create a new file. And we're going to call this as config and then map dot and then YAML. So this is where we're going to add in the Postgres user as well as the password. And here I'm going to say K. And you can see that I get some auto completion because of the dependency that I did install. And what I want is the Kubernetes config map. And the name for this will be Postgres-config. And by the way, you can find all of the YAML configurations under the description of this video so that you don't have to type this. So here for data, we're going to have Postgres_DB. So we want to have a database called Amigos Code. Let's duplicate this a couple of times. So we're going to have the user and finally the password. So the password, let's just keep it as always. I'm going to say password. So this should be familiar. With Docker Compose, remember at the very top, when we defined Postgres, have a look, Postgres user and the password. So now let me close this. And I've just realized that I'm missing the letter D in here. So now that we have the configuration, next let's define. So let's create a new file. And this file here will be called volume dot and then YAML. And within this file, we're going to define how Postgres will store its data into our Minikube node. And for the volume, let's start with a persistent volume. So here, let me just say K. And I don't think they have a persistent volume in here. So let's just say a generic Kubernetes resource. The API version will be 1. The kind will be persistent and then volume. And then for metadata, we need to have name. This will be Postgres-PV- and then volume. Let's add in some labels. So labels, we're going to say that the type for this will be a local volume. And then the app is Postgres. And we're going to create this app in a second. Now for the persistent volume, we need to specify the spec. We have to have the storage class name. I'm going to say this is manual. The capacity for this will have a storage of 5 gigs. We also need to specify the access mode. And for now, we want read and then write many. And the host path, so host path, this will be under /mount/data. And I'm going to show you this in a second. So this will be the mount path within Minikube. So this is the host. So now that we have the persistent volume, we need the actual claim. And the claim will be pretty much almost the same as this. So let's just take this and have a look, 3 dashes to denote a new resource. And this will be persistent volume and then claim. This time we don't need the type local. And for the spec right here, let's just take this spec and paste it in. And the difference here really is that we don't specify the capacity nor the host path, but what we want to specify is resources and then how much do we want to claim from this persistent volume. So I want to claim the storage as basically everything, so 5 gigs. And just to show you what this volume YAML is, so within our host, we have a claim, and basically it claims everything that this volume has, which is 5 gigs, and then Postgres will be able to store some data. Now let's define the service. So this is how other pods communicate with Postgres. So within Postgres, Let's create a new file, and this will be service dot and then YAML, and type K, and we should have a service here. So Kubernetes service. The name for this will be Postgres. The app will also be Postgres, and we'll define this in a second. Then the port, this will be 5432. And what we're going to say is that this will have the target of 5432. So this is what gets sent to the pod itself. And then for the type, let's remove this. I want to basically this service to be only accessible within the cluster. So cluster IP, and there we go. Now let's define the stateful set. So here, just say file and then stateful set dot and then YAML. And this is basically what instantiates the instance. So here, let me just see if they have the stateful set, which is a shame. They don't have all the resources, but we can just create a deployment and then change the name. So deployment, because stateful set and deployment is almost the same thing. So the name of this will be Postgres. And you can see that I'm getting auto completion. So the metadata for this deployment will be Postgres. And then all pods will have the label app and then Postgres. And for the containers in here, let's also just say Postgres. And the image pool policy, I'm going to say if not present. And restart will be always. And this is it. Now I said that this has to be a stateful set. And by default, if you have a stateful set, you need to specify the service name. And the service name is post and then gress. So this service name is this one that we've just defined right here. And we gave it a name Postgres. So then the service will be attached to this stateful set. Now let's define the config map that we have in here. So and attach it to this stateful set. So inside of containers, just say env from, and this will be config map ref. The name will be, so this name here. So if I go back, oops, not there, but this is the name. Command C, go back to the stateful set, paste that in, and there we go. Now we need to specify the volume. So just before containers, let's go ahead and say volumes. This will be Postgres. Then the persistent volume claim and the claim name. So if I go back to volume, have a look. This was the name. So Postgres PC volume. And in fact, let's just say claim in here, because otherwise it will have the exact same name. So this has to be claim. So let's just take this, go back, and then paste the name there. And it's as simple as this. So you can see how things are being connected. Now that we have the volume in here, we have to tell this container that it can basically mount it. And the way we do it is, so within the container itself, we can say volume mounts, and the mount path will be /var/lib/postgresql, and then data, and the name Postgres. And finally, I want to set some resource limits in here. So just say resources, and we're going to have requests. So this will have a CPU, no auto completion there, but that's fine. So 100 millicores, and then memory 256. And for the limits, I just want to cap things. So the same, let's just take CPU and memory, and this will be 5, and this will be 5, and then 12. And to be honest, this is it. So we define the service, the stateful set, persistent volume claim, as well as the volume, and also the config map, which is attached to this Postgres pod, which you'll see in a second. Next, let's go ahead and apply these resources.